Guys, thank you so much for being here with me. It's a pleasure to say hello. How's the quarantine treating you?
Oh, bored out of my mind and gained 20 pounds.
How about you? How you doing?
I'm doing well. I am on somebody else's computer. That's why it says David Neuendorf. But my name is Luis Xtravaganza, and it's a pleasure to be here with you, Alejandro Marti.
Thank you very much, Luis. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
What have you guys been up to before the quarantine, before everything hit? What were your personal projects, Kevin?
I choreograph. I've been choreographing fashion shows twice a year for many years, doing various little TV shows, kind of the same sort of stuff I've been doing my whole career. I think I just taken a vacation, though. Thank God I got it in before the quarantine, and had taken some time off in the fall. So it's been kind of a long, a seemingly extra long period of not doing much. I took time off to have time, and then the universe gave me even more time.
What about you, Luis? What were you doing before the quarantine hit?
Before the quarantine, I have a podcast as well. It's called Work, WERQUE podcast. And I also teach a monthly work dance class. And so I've had to cancel those for right now. I'm looking hopefully to reopen them soon, but I don't want to take the chance, with everything that's going on. So I'm just going to wait a little bit before we reopen the class.
Yeah, I think we're all going to have to wait it out for a while because it's,
I know, huh?
It's kind of tough. So what brings us together tonight, or at whatever time people are going to be watching this and listening to this, they're going to be watching it on Monday night. They're going to be listening to it on Wednesday morning, and it's going to be on a podcast like on Thursday midday or something.
Awesome.
Is Vogue. And my first memories of Vogue are, of course, that marvelous music video. Before the video, I do remember getting very much in touch with Madonna via that song. I knew about her before, but it was that song that really marked me as part of the Madonna generation. Do you know what I mean? It was like you understood what had happened with Material Girl and Like a Virgin and things like that. But once I heard that song, the breadth of the song, the space that it gave you to dance and to sing and to do so many things, I guess I did become a fan of Madonna from there on. And it's great to have you two guys here today because I want my listeners and my viewers to get a feeling of what Vogue is all about, how you guys came to the Vogue phenomenon and what it means to you 30 years after. Let's start with Kevin.
Well, when you guys reached out to me to talk about Vogue, I have a lot to say and I have a lot of opinions about it. And I know that I'm part of the story of Vogue and the sort of the ongoing storytelling. But when you really talk about the history of Vogue and where it came from and where it originated in the ballrooms with the houses, that's why I was like, Luis has to be here because Luis is the OG. He'll give you the down, nitty gritty of where it came from. I am part of a group that was able to bring this dance to the masses, but where it originated and where it came from, it's really all due to the joy and loves and lives of the LGBTQ Latino Black community in New York. And go ahead, Luis, take it away.
Yeah, go ahead. Tell me all about that story. I was watching Strike a Pose. I was working and watching Strike a Pose. We're all multitasking, and I was amazed by how that movement that took us by surprise with the music video and did not discriminate, nor did it actually focus on a particular community, came from a particular community. So tell me more about it.
Voguing originated back in the late 50s, and it originated in Harlem, and there were, groups of LGBTQIA plus people getting together. It was mostly drag queens and transvestites getting together, and they would put on a ball, which basically was like a beauty contest back then, right? At its rudimentary nucleus. And so, Vogue came out of a category because these balls had categories, right? Who was the best dressed? Who looked most like a woman? Who can be a fabulous showgirl? And so Vogue came out of, one of those categories. And it was like, who can be most like a model and pose like in the pages of Vogue. And so as the years progressed, a lot more gay men who were not, transitioning or in drag became interested in the ball, started attending the balls, and then, started walking these categories as well. And Vogue was really one of the more popular categories that, that gay men would enter. And in the beginning, it was very slow, right? As everything that starts off new, it kind of starts off slow. So the poses were literally, doing a pose and then doing another pose. And so it's really just started off that slow, right? And as the years progress, the spaces between the poses became shorter and shorter. So from here to here became here. Yeah. And so as we, as it progressed, it started becoming more fluid and, people started, posing faster, and it became a dance form. Yeah. Vogue is, for lack of a better term, the ultimate expression of self-expression, the ultimate self-expression. Yeah. And you want to express yourself better than the person who is competing next to you. So, tricks, armbands, dips to the floor, all that started to come in to kind of outdo the person that was voguing against you. So today we have, people throwing themselves on the floor with, floor dips and shablams and all that, and death-defying moves that I cannot do. And so, it has progressed to, even faster now. So I'm proud that it's now having a resurgence, another renaissance, because it's gone through a couple of renaissances throughout the years. And so it still holds really dear to that, Black and Latinx underground culture, because, is an expression of, their worth, their power.
Embracing their own power.
Yes.
In an environment where culture was really not identifying beauty along those lines, it was an opportunity for these disenfranchised communities to embrace their own beauty and their own power and declare themselves beautiful and themselves powerful. If no one else is going to do it yourself.
That's right.
I think that's like the most wonderful expression in dance that you can have. It really it takes power for yourself and your community.
When did voguing start? Was there a particular starting off point? Was there a year? I guess that's the question.
I mean, it started in the late 50s. I don't have an exact year for you. I wish I could. I wish I did. But yeah, it started in the late 50s, early 60s.
I really like to think, to give Luis and Jose a lot of credit here. I really think that it transformed into a dance form along the time when Luis and Jose and Willie Ninja were in the scene, because they all had a dance background and they were all giving it this dance fluidity and counts and tricks and movement and adding a quality of movement that came from training. Both Luis and Jose are classically trained dancers, and they brought that to their art form. And I think that stepped it up to another level and evolved it into something that really could be called dance, and not just posing in positions, but really dance. And it's gone from there into other realms. But I think it really transformed into a dance form from Jose and Luis and Willie.
Tell me about your experience as a classical dancer.
I've always been dancing. When I was young, I used to dance in front of the television. I used to love an artist called Iris Chacon. I don't know if you know who Iris Chacon is, but she was a Puerto Rican dancer, and she would, dance around in a thong and feathers, and I just found that very attractive. And so my mom put me in dance class to get me from in front of the television, and that's how kind of my dance career, flourished from there. And I've trained in ballet, modern, jazz, flamenco, so, tap.
Kevin, what about yourself? When did you start dancing?
I started very late. I went to school in Singapore, and I just was asked to do a couple dance performances. And I kind of found this little love for it, where I also got some attention for it. And my first class was at USC, at college. So a year and a half after attending college with my first dance class, I was on tour. So it was very quick, fast, and furious. I had gymnastics training when I was young, so I had all the sort of facility, but nowhere to really put it until I got into a class. So I was pretty fresh off the boat when I ran into Jose and Luis and on tour. And I mean, I can't understate the impact they had on me. The sense of freedom of being who you want to be, choosing who you want to be, being out loud and proud, being open to all these other dance forms and how movement communicates. It was an entirely different language for me, and one that I embraced wholeheartedly. And I just felt like a sponge the whole time on tour. I mean, I'm such a big fan, Luis. I love you so much.
and I love you too. And that speaks to just how amazing of a dancer that Kevin is. I mean, listen, he just said he started late, and so I've been dancing for practically all my life. And Kevin comes in and, is able to absorb, retrain, train and make not only Vogue, but dance his own. And so that really speaks to his talent and how amazing of a dancer he is as well. I'll take 20% for that.
What was the vibe back then in the 80s, at the end of the 70s, at the beginning of the 80s, at the mid 80s? And I guess compared to what it is now, what can you share with us about those early beginnings of the rise of the LGBTQI and the trans community flourishing as freedom fighters? Because more than dancers, I think that's what you guys are. And that's what you transmitted when we saw you perform, and when we see you in Strike a Pose, we see you as freedom fighters. So what was it like back then?
Go ahead, Luis.
We definitely were aware, right, of what was going on in the LGBTQIA plus community, right? And, back then for us, it was more of an innocent time, right? We really were just kind of loving hanging out with our friends and voguing and expressing ourselves and being fierce. When it came time, to the tour, we stepped in, not only me and Jose, but Kevin and Carlton and Oliver and, and Gabriel and Slam. We all stepped into these roles unbeknownst to us that were kind of like, yes, freedom fighters, but, examples of, the possibility of what other people can do with their lives, right? And how they come out and express themselves to not just other people, but their families. And none of us take that role, that position lightly. I know that for a fact. I know that, we don't come into freedom fighter or any terms like that we don't come into that with any arrogance. It's more humility, because we weren't looking to set out to be those people. Honestly, we were just on a gig and, doing the job, right? And so as a result of that, we get to be someone, people that other people can look up to and say, hey, they inspire me. These days, I mean, God, the LGBTQIA plus community has been fighting for rights and to be seen and to be loved since the beginning of time. And, it's unfortunate that we have to keep on doing that. We have to keep on reasserting ourselves, reasserting our power, reasserting our beauty and our strength. And these days, my goodness, it's at like volume 20, right? Because not only, because of the Black Lives Matter movement, but because, Black Trans Lives Matter movement and, all of that, is being pushed to the forefront, and it's being taken, being taken seriously is an understatement, right? I mean, it's changing the world yet again. Yeah. And isn't that fantastic?
I think our greatest gift is that we were given an extremely safe space to be ourselves in. And we were safe around each other. We were safe in our own little bubble. We didn't have a lot of outside media coming in, or we didn't hear a lot of it anyways, coming in to tell us how, we were, how Satanistic we were, or how we were the Antichrist. We didn't hear a lot of that. We didn't get a lot of this chatter in the background. We got to be around ourselves and support ourselves. And I would propose to anyone who's listening to this podcast that safe spaces are the first space that you can come from to evolve.
Right.
And it's super important to give these spaces to the people around you who are struggling with their identity or their sexuality, or whoever they are and whoever they want to be. Let people be who they're going to be, and they'll bloom, and they'll blossom, and they'll grow. And you never know the impact that will have on future generations. We didn't know. We were just given a safe space to be ourselves, and we jumped into it, and we were ourselves. Give that to others, and you'll see changes beyond your imaginations in the future.
Did you guys personally ever have to struggle with that? Did you struggle with your identities? Was there a moment in time, Luis, that as a Latino man, you were confronted by other Latino men because of who you were, or how you behaved, or how you danced?
I mean, was I bullied when I was younger? Not so much. I was fortunate enough to go to elementary school where it was multiracial, and kids will be kids, right? Like, I got picked to be on the girls, when it was like girls against the boys, and we were playing like punch ball or something, like the girls always wanted me on their team. So like that wasn't, the best feeling in the world. But, as far as like getting beaten up or, anything like that, I didn't experience anything like that. Again, back then, bullying wasn't as severe as it is today, right? I mean, kids are killing themselves and killing each other, right? I mean, it could be to that extreme, but back then it was just like, you fag, and it's just like, oh, whatever, dude, your mom is ugly, blah, 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 and so it was kind of like just words, right? Today is like, and so, but, and I got into junior high school, and, I'm probably the only dancer that got into the High School of Performing Arts. So before that point, it was like, oh, there's the gay guy. And, but I did a performance in junior high school, and, after that, everybody was like, woo, there's the gay guy, we love him. It's just like, oh, okay. And so,
your hours.
Yeah, I was like, now you like me. It's like, okay. But even then, as Kevin was saying, even then I had a group of friends that, kept me, I don't want to say safe, but kept me, in their group. So I felt safe in their group. And, we, just, it wasn't that type of like gang mentality. And then, after, during high school, I get with the House of Xtravaganza, and then it became like, don't mess with Lewis or else we will all beat you up, And so, I'm lucky in that way, right? I'm lucky in that way. Now, gosh, I mean, one time I was walking home late night and I get pulled over by the cops, and I was racially profiled for being Latino, yeah, and it was that moment of, oh, you fit the description of somebody that we're looking at, and at that point, there was a moment where I was like, God, what am I doing wrong here? It's like, do I look that Latin, or was I wearing some crazy clothes? How was I walking down the street? And so that moment made me question, who I was and where do I fit? Thankfully, they didn't put a knee to my neck, but it felt kind of crazy.
Yeah. What about you, Kevin? Did you ever get either racially profiled, or did you ever get did you ever have any problems with who you were? What was it? Was there a moment was there ever a moment in your life where you couldn't, come to grips with who you were, with your identity? What you were saying a few minutes ago.
Well, I've always felt like the odd man out. Everywhere I was, there was never any mixed Asian kids anywhere. Especially, I was blonde and curly hair and fair skinned, and nobody could figure me out anyways. They didn't know if I was Latin or Asian or white, or they didn't know what I was. So I think a lot of people hesitated to sort of put me in a box and call me names other than faggot. But thankfully, I was used to being the outsider, so I let things drip off me very easily, slide off me very easily. I got called names, but I was naive enough that a lot of times I didn't even know what those names meant. So I was like, I knew they said it with venom, but I had no idea what they were saying, so it didn't impact me in any way. I definitely felt like an outsider as an Asian. I just felt not represented. I didn't feel necessarily like people were racially profiling me in a bad way, but I felt like people didn't understand me, and that there was no representation anywhere in media for me to look at and go, oh, other than like Bruce Lee, or Mr. Miyagi, there was nowhere for me to look and go, oh, there's a normal Asian person. And then on top of that, oh, there's a normal gay Asian person. So there was this double whammy of like, well, who am I, and where is my tribe? Where are my people? On tour, I was in the questioning category. I knew that I was attracted to guys sexually. I just didn't know how to have a relationship with one. I didn't know if that was possible, because I didn't know if, I didn't have an experience where I felt romantically attached to somebody. And I also was very, another reason I was obsessed with Jose and Luis is because they were this example of out loud and proud, wild, crazy, here's my sexuality on my sleeve. Here I am, get into it or get lost. and that was way outside of my wheelhouse, But what I discovered on tour was that, after seeing millions of people all around the world, many, many, many of which were gay, I realized that there was no difference. Like, you could be whoever you wanted to be and whoever you were and be gay, and it didn't have to define you. Didn't mean you had to be any different, act any different, talk any differently, dress any differently. Those are all choices you could make, but it didn't mean that you had to be that, or that's what you were. That's what you were. You can just be yourself, and your sexuality is a completely separate side of you. It doesn't define who you are at all. And that was very freeing to me. Because now I'm just woo. Now I feel like the chains came off, and I can be whoever I want in any given moment. There's a freedom now that I've given myself to explore. I can to be queer or gay or bi or Q or whatever I feel like being. I can be flamboyant. I can be butch. Whatever I want to be, I have the freedom to be that now. But I had to give myself that freedom. It took time for that.
Tell me about the story with Madonna. Let's go to the story that brought us together tonight. How do you become a part of her entourage?
Well, Lewis was in there first, so
I was.
Yeah, in New York. You guys auditioned in New York before she came to LA. So she already knew that you guys were on the tour. We were like, bookending you guys.
What year was this? 1988?
1989.
1989. Okay. She started looking for dancers. We went out on tour, in January 17th?
We started rehearsing in February or late January. Yeah.
Yeah. So me and Jose sent in a videotape of me and our group of friends, and we sent in a tape of us voguing. And then and we didn't think much of it. And then we heard back that, she was interested in meeting with us and, kind of like seeing what we got in person. And so we didn't really think much of it in the beginning because at that time we were doing like club gigs and we were traveling to Japan and doing, and voguing in Japan for clubs and stuff like that. So, we were like, oh, this is cool. Yeah, we'll meet her. And it was a bunch of us. And then she opened the club, our friend who's a DJ, David DePino, opened a club for us. It was called Trece. And we met her there and we danced for her there. And she's like, oh, cool, I'll make my decision. And then we went out with her, I think that night or that Saturday night. And, we we went to the club with her and like the sea parted. And it's one of those moments that, all of those people who were your friends or, acquaintances see you walk in with Madonna and they're like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, bitches. That's right. That's Madonna. This is me. And I'm standing next to her and we're talking and hanging out. And so, so that was fun. And then we did a formal audition for her with, all the other dancers. And that's when we met Salim. Slam, and she was taken by surprise that we knew how to like dance. She didn't know we were technically trained, so that even put us more in her favor that we can like dance and not just like street dancers that could just do one thing. So I think that's what put us over the edge, and we choreographed the Vogue video first. And then we went on tour.
What about Kevin?
Well, I was one of the stragglers. They had already auditioned in New York. They already knew that they were bringing Slam, Jose, and Lewis. So there were only a limited number of seats left, let's say. And they'd actually hired another dancer named Kevin in New York and brought him to LA. I auditioned along with the other 5,000 people in LA. Which is a very brutal cut. And we did it was like 3 days, 6 different routines or something. And at the end, I knew I didn't have it because she was off sitting in the corner talking to Gabriel and Oliver and Carlton and not paying attention at all to anything that the rest of us were doing. And they had one last thing. They're like, I said, if anyone wants to freestyle, then just go ahead. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to give this all I got because I've been here for 3 days and it's either going to be worth my while or not.
It's all or nothing. This is it.
All or nothing. I came out, I did gymnastics, I tapped, I did Balinese spirituals and African, and I like twirled and splits and kicks and turns and technique, everything you could possibly imagine, one by one, like in a row. And as I walked off, Christopher, her brother, said, "Oh my God, that was amazing, great job," and Nikki too. But Madonna was like, didn't even see what I did. So, so cut to weeks later. I thought nothing would come of this at all, and then Christopher called me and asked me to assist Carol Armitage as the associate choreographer. I didn't even know what that meant. And I called my agent and I was like, what does it mean? She was like, oh my God, are you so excited? And I'm like, I don't know what you're telling me. I don't even know what that job is. And I still didn't, even when I got on the set. She didn't last long. She's wonderful, great choreographer, but just not right for a commercial dance tour with a very limited amount of time. So she brought in Vincent Patterson, who had just done Express Yourself with her. And he's fucking incredible. And I just worked with him on for one day on a gig, maybe 3 months earlier. And thankfully he kept me on as associate choreographer. So when we got doing the video for Vogue, in the middle of the video, during the shoot, with her curlers in her hair, she asked me if I wanted to go on tour. And I was like, well, okay, yeah. And then she started negotiating my contract with me right there. I'll give you this money and then you can have that. But you can't have this, and you have this title right there in between the shots. And then come to find out, she fired the other Kevin from New York and kept me on. So when we came into rehearsal the next moment, there was no more other Kevin, and I'd magically transformed into this Kevin. I still don't know what happened to him. I feel terrible, but I don't know. I'm glad I got the opportunity to go on tour. That's how it happened to me. I was the last audition, and I think it just came from seeing how we related to each other, how much fun we had together, my ethnicity in the mix, and then I worked hard. My work ethic was really good, and I was there for the team.
When it comes to discipline, how can you describe her, Luis?
I mean, she definitely knows what she wants. She's definitely a hard worker. And, the funny thing is that, and I'll speak for myself, I came in, with this, how do I put this? I was an Xtravaganza, honey, and we were very popular. And we were doing our own thing in New York and, and traveling and this, that, the other. So, of course, we came in with a little, not attitude, but, I came in, like my people didn't stink. And she, put us to task. And I kind of love that, because there's a realness that came with that, right? She loved us because we were so brilliantly colored and flamboyant and so assured of ourselves, right? And would, have a kiki with us and joke with us. But when it came down to work, and doing the steps and rehearsals, she was in it. So we had to be in it. And she came prepared every day to rehearsal. We didn't have to wait for her. So we made sure that she was not waiting for us.
When the video hit and it started causing this mainstream storm, when it took over the world, what did you guys feel? How did you guys feel?
Well, in the beginning, we didn't feel much because, like Kevin said, we were literally in this bubble.
It was like a wave behind us.
Yes.
So we were always in the next spot when the mania hit behind us. We weren't even there to see it.
Right. So even when it came out and the video premiered, we were in rehearsals. They rolled out a TV for us to see the premiere of the video. And literally, we were at Disney Studios on the lot. And we saw the video and we were like, "Ooh, that's so cool. Oh, we look so fabulous, blah, blah, blah." And then we go back to rehearsal. So any fanfare that happened after that, we honestly didn't know that it was that. I mean, we knew it was fabulous, but we didn't know it was catching fire like that, because we went back to work. And then we were in this little protective, tour bubble.
We didn't really have TVs. We didn't know that MTV was holding all these competitions for people making their own Vogue videos and their own Vogue routines. And, it was just, there's a lot going on outside of our own little world that we didn't know about.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's crazy. You would think that you guys were aware of it, and I understand that you were in the tour bubble, but I can't believe that in spite of being in that bubble, you were not permeated by what was going on in the mainstream. Either, I don't know, if your family or your friends, because it was a frenzy, man. It was like everybody wanted to Vogue.
Well, also you got to remember that there was no Facebook, there was no Instagram, there was no Snapchat, no TikTok, nothing like that. Yeah. And my parents are Puerto Ricans from the old country, so they're like, okay, sure, who's Madonna again? And so, and then I had my sister with me, so it wasn't like, she was like, oh wow, this is exciting stuff, but it's just like, I don't know.
I remember when I brought my mom to Japan to come see the show and hang out with us, I remember asking her if she wanted to meet Madonna. She's like, I don't really need to meet Madonna. I was like, but I brought you all the way to Japan to see the show and hang out with us. And she ended up instead of staying with us for the whole 3 weeks, which I thought she was going to do, she actually just flew in for a couple of days on her way to Bali. But that's the kind of family that I think both of us have. They're not really affected by pop culture, and certainly that generation not phased by what we were doing.
Oh yeah, when I told my mother that I was dancing for Madonna, she was like, "That's so nice." I was like, "No, you're not getting it, Madonna." She's like, "Yeah, okay, great, Madonna, good for you." I'm like, "Oh, forget it."
Let's talk about the MTV performance. Who came up with the idea of the whole Edwardian thing, the whole Marie Antoinette things?
Well, we were in France and at our sort of closing little party, and I remember we were discussing the MTV Awards, and I don't know who came up with the first idea, but I feel it was
playing charades.
It was Vince and Madonna both, right? Because it was about, we were talking about Dangerous Liaison.
But it was because we were playing charades, remember? We were playing charades, and the topic was Dangerous Liaisons. So when they were like, "Oh, it's Dangerous Liaisons," we all looked at each other and they were like, "They were really Vogue." And then literally from that, Vince and Madonna was like, they took it to the next level.
Yeah.
So that's how it came about. At least that's how I remember it.
That was another big moment, man. It was like, wow, like watching it be reconstructed again before your very eyes on TV. Once you had already broken through, mainstream, and such a patriarchal structure taking place in pop, and taking over heterosexual males and heterosexual females and gays and lesbians and everyone, and then watching you guys powder your nose on that stage was like, oh boy, that was some crazy shit, man. That was crazy back then, man, because it was like, you know what I'm saying, it was like you were a teenager, I was a teenager back then, so all those things really meant so much to us, because you guys were expressing yourselves in ways that we never thought were possible, whether we were heterosexual or gay or lesbians or whatever. It was like, oh shit, they're doing that on TV.
Madonna was always very interested in, of course, pushing the button, pushing the envelope. We definitely did not want to do or recreate Vogue that we did in the Bond Mission tour. She loves doing it different every time, which is another testament to her artistry and her creativity. So when this Dangerous Liaison, idea came up, however it came up, they took it to the next level. I mean, she wore the dress that Michelle Pfeiffer wore in the movie Dangerous Liaisons. That's the dress that she's wearing. Like, she goes all the way there. There's no stopping. There's no half-assing it. She does it all the way there, and she wants everybody included to go all the way there with it. And for that, like, no idea was too like controversial. No idea was too like, oh no, we can't do that, right? Especially because we were the closing act, and you know, what are they gonna say? You know, we're the last act to go on, so it's just like give it all you got, you know, throw everything at them. And so yes, powdering the nose, using, you know, slam, using the snuff, and I mean, those are really, if you get into it, really provocative images, because back then in the Renaissance and in those times, snuff was not, you know, was not talcum powder. I mean, if you really get into it, you know, the men carried around that snuff to like revive themselves. And so things like that, you know, although beautiful in picture, you know, have this underlying message of pushing that button and pushing that envelope and being provocative in a way that is almost, subliminal.
A couple of questions I want to ask before I let you go. Once again, thanking you very much for taking the time to talk to me. The first one is that you, as part of a community that it was struck by an epidemic as deadly as AIDS in the 80s. What your take is on the pandemic, on how you see people from all colors, races, sexes living with this after having been there, you know, at the height of the AIDS epidemic. Kevin.
I mean, I'm torn because I see this huge response, you know, when it comes to, you know, a pandemic that affects everybody. And it's not just a gay disease that can be swept under the rug and action not taken until hundreds of thousands of people have died and hundreds of thousands of people in our community specifically have died. It's very enlightening to see how it's disproportionately affecting minority communities because of their access to healthcare and their access to insurance, and it's very disconcerting. But I think, given the climate of and how everyone is now viewing minority rights and violence against minorities and, you know, access to voting and insurance and health, now that everybody's actually observing it, this is, I mean, it's really becoming, the inequities of our culture are becoming painfully clear. And I think that's an important growing point for us as a country, as a community, as a people. There's going to be a lot of great stuff that comes out of this. There's going to be some painful moments. There have been a lot of painful moments already, but you can tell that there's this forward momentum that's creating this conversation that's so much bigger than it ever has been before. And so many more voices are being heard that have never been heard before in the way that they've been heard now. Like, they've been you listen to it and it goes in one ear, somewhere it doesn't process. There's like screaming now, and you can't help but you can't ignore it. You can't ignore these voices and these issues anymore. And I think that's amazing. If anything comes out of this pandemic that's like phenomenal and amazing, it has to be that people are being heard for the first time in the absence of all this other excess pop culture stuff and movies and mobile. There's nothing else left. All there is to listen to is what's going on for people.
Yeah.
What's going on for people. And this is what's coming back. Like, that we need change. We need evolution as a culture.
Do you guys see a world where we'll stop calling each other minorities and start looking and talking to each other as just people, you know, as humans? Because I think that the whole minority thing is so obsolete, man. It's 2020. Like, I don't know. What do you guys think?
I hope so.
I really do hope so. I really do hope so. Listen, they had slavery for 400 years, right? So it's not going to change overnight. I really do have hope that it will change. I wish it would change, sooner than later. But a lot of these mentalities are so ingrained in people's history and family and tradition that it's hard to break that consciousness. So, do I have hope for the future? Absolutely. I mean, do I wish it would happen faster? Absolutely.
We're a couple generations away. We need more mixed babies, kids who are multicultural, second culture children, third culture children. You can't be racist when it's part of you.
Right.
So the more that we join with others and cross those divides, the sooner that sort of disappearance of the idea of minority majority will disappear.
What are your
And you're so right. That word minority is so antiquated. Like, who even says that anymore? Like, really?
It's empowering, right? Like,
so crazy.
What are your plans for the future, Luis? What's in your schedule for the near future and the far future?
Well, I'm going to keep doing my podcast and then hopefully, teach class again and, keep being an advocate for, the disenfranchised, the quote unquote minority, boo. And, it's important that I keep my voice raised, right? And keep my visibility, high, and keep fighting for people who, like Kevin said, are disenfranchised. And, I hate to sound like a broken record, but, that includes Black lives and Black trans lives that matter.
What about you, Kevin? Well, I was just going on tour when the quarantine happened. I sing background vocals for Perry Farrell's Kind Heaven Orchestra, and also I'm his creative director. So we have some shows coming up, or something special which I can't quite elaborate on, coming up this fall. Instead of Lollapalooza, we'll be doing something different this year. And what else? I can't say anything about that. Continuing to do my choreography stuff with the fashion shows that I do, and I have a really interesting offer on the table that my hat has been thrown into the ring, says the producer, on a gig that would be very, very interesting. And I can't elaborate further because I don't have it yet, but hopefully. Hopefully. I'm always looking for new opportunities, and also new opportunities to be a voice. So thank you so much for allowing us to have a voice and to say something that can impact others. We really do appreciate you reaching out to us.
It has been my absolute pleasure of you and to once again express my gratitude as part of a generation that owes you the awareness and the conscience that you expressed through those videos, through those choreographies, not only with Madonna, but with everything that you've done. It's definitely inspiring. And once again, thank you for being freedom fighters and, not giving up. It's amazing. It's great. I wish you nothing but the best. Best of luck to both of you guys. God bless you. Take good care. Stay safe. And please come to Colombia soon,
Gladly.
Yeah, we would love to. That would be awesome.
Love to.
Kevin Stea, Luis Xtravaganza. Thank you very much for being in the podcast. It's been an honor.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Take care. Bye.